spoil sports. Don't just bet. Choose wisely.
Hello all and welcome back to On The Wire for this Christmas preview special. We're going to be tackling some of the big grade ones, some of the big handicaps, and we've got a fantastic panel to bring you through it all. My name's Andrew Blair-White and welcome to On The Wire. Before we get stuck into the action, I'd like to remind all of our Irish listeners that you can get a very good offer from our sponsors, Boyle Sports. If you bet €10, you are entitled to €70 worth of free bet credit. So make sure to get involved in that. All the information you need will be in a link down in the description below. And of course, you can scan the QR code on screen now. Delighted to be joined by a sterling panel of guests. We've got the usuals in for the Christmas special. Christmas time, Gavin, a time for family, a time for food, but most importantly, a time to be backing some winners.
Yeah, this Christmas is going to be busy between football, watching Liverpool win again. We've got the darts, and we've got 11 grade ones over Christmas. So the racing, except for Cheltenham maybe in March, I think it's the best few days of the year racing, personally speaking anyway. Obviously you've got other great festivals like Punchestown, etc. But I think Christmas, there's something very special about it, especially when it starts at 11:30, 12 o'clock and you have to set your alarm to get up to watch racing.
We're 10 seconds in, Gavin, and you're already getting a Liverpool kind of propaganda in.
Oh yeah,
that must be an all-time record.
Yeah, 6 goals yesterday. Yeah. And the darts as well. The darts, geez, it's great. It's just such a pity that Sid Waddell is no longer with us, because the way darts has taken off since he passed away. And can you imagine him? I remember one time Dennis Priestley was playing Phil Taylor in the World, maybe semi-finals, 4 sets all, two legs all. And Sid Waddell goes, "It couldn't be any more exciting if Elvis Presley walked in the door and asked for a chip, buddy." So it's just a pity he's not about these days, that's all.
Dan, for yourself, I know this time, you should be out probably buying some presents, but I'm sure you're looking at Fontwell's cards, Sedgefield's cards, some of the ordinary fare on Stephen's Day.
Well, this morning's always a really stressful one, because you've done the preliminary research across the 8 or 9 meetings there are across the country, and you've got your Sedgefields, you've got your Fontwells, and normally there's 1 or 2 hidden away in those races, and it's always a really stressful morning on the admin side, just waiting to see if they do get declared. I had a really good bet lined up at Fontwell in the 252, a Class 5 handicap chase. 9.59, still not there. 10 o'clock, not there. Christmas ruined. One of those sad achievements that always seems to happen. Always the strongest fancy never gets declared. But look, there's so much to get stuck into, as we're going to discuss. It's a wonderful time of year. No presents, but bet slips will be plenty.
252 at Fontwell. I would like to say on behalf of our sponsors, Boyle Sports, when the fun stops, stop, Dan. Mark, for yourself, I'm sure will you be racing over Christmas time, Leopardstown or Limerick?
Yeah, very much so. On duty for the Irish field, and like that, today is one of the busiest days of the year. We're getting previews done, kind of preliminary writing up the previous day's stuff and getting as ahead as we can. So no, look, I love it. And in terms of the maybe Stephen's Day or Boxing Day, if you want to call it over there, I think we're probably 3-1 maybe on what we're calling it, Stephen's Day or Boxing Day here, with 3 Irish lads in the mix here. But it comes thick and fast. But I think you nearly need a day afterwards or that evening maybe just to properly wrap your head around it again. And look at it. It's great stuff. And can't wait now. It's just that these next few days, personally, my favorite part of Christmas is that Christmas Day lull. You get maybe around 3 or 4 o'clock. You've had the grub. People are beginning to, stamina just waning at 1 or 2. And you just go and look at the cards once again. You have that little moment to refresh. You just pass a lovely couple of hours, get away from family for a little while. And I hope they don't watch this anyway, but you know what I mean? It's just a nice little reprieve. Get yourself into a good place for the 26th.
Definitely. So, look, we're going to be looking through 2 of the big grade ones, the 2 big 3-mile grade 1 chases over the Christmas period, alongside 2 of the most competitive handicaps. And in between, we'll be talking to Donn McClean for a couple of minutes about his festival fancies. But we'll talk first about the Savills Chase. We talk about the Savills Chase first, just because of, I suppose, the magnitude of this clash between Factifile and Gallopin Des Champs. Both met each other in the John Dirk. And Gavin, coming to yourself, I know personally, when you're looking at betting, you're usually siding with the younger horse. You like kind of the improving one. Is that still the case in this scenario, or would you think Galopin Des Champs around his favourite Leopardstown can turn it around?
I usually would go with the younger horse, except when you're dealing with the champion, Andrew. And I think, even though Galopin Des Champs has won 2 Gold Cups, I still don't think he gets fully the credit he deserves. Since he's gone chasing and went left-handed, he should be 8 from 8, except for that mishap in the Turners. All victories have been very, very easy. There's not one race of those 8. The 7 that he won out of 8, that you'd say it was a close run thing. He was easily the best. He's lost his last 4 starts going right-handed. You might say it's at the start of the season or the end of the season. I just think he's better left-handed. I'll never forget his beginner's chase, brilliant performance. And then this time last year, he wins this race by 23 lengths from Jerry Calam. Factified's a brilliant horse. It was 2.5 miles like we saw the last day. He'd probably beat him per toe. I just think that Galopin Des Champs, I think he'll take it up maybe from the start, but certainly down the back straight, he'll be in front. And I think he'll take a lot of beating.
Dan, the way this race is going to be ran is going to be fascinating. As Gavin alluded to there, you'd think they'll make plenty of use of Galopin. He seems to be at his best when they do that. It's probably going to be short on runners, but it's not going to be short on quality, this race.
Well, absolutely that. And you say, with the ground probably likely to be on the quicker side as well, you'd think they want to make this as much of a stamina test as possible to benefit Galopin Des Champs. And you can almost see a bit of a cat and mouse scenario, Paul Townend out in front on Galopin Des Champs. Obviously, Fat de Phare, we know, I agree with Gavin, if it was over 2.5 miles, then Fat de Phare probably would have too much speed for him. But we know Galopin Des Champs is just a true champion. And I think until Fat de Phare can go and beat him at a track like Leopardstown, I think we still have to see him as the standard setter. The run in the John Durkin was perfectly acceptable, even better than probably what most of us expected. Here he is powering away from Brave Man's Game for his first Gold Cup. And I think you may look at that initially and say, oh, Brave Man's Game, what's he done? But I think that was absolutely prime Brave Man's Game. That was the best version we've seen of him. That race at the time had all the right horses in the right place. He's beaten everything that's come his way. Jerry Calam was obviously the great pretender last season, put him in his place emphatically in this race last year. Until Fat de Phare can beat him here, I think we still have to look at Galopin Des Champs as the one everything in that division has to beat.
Yeah, very much so. Mark, let's talk about the John Durkin itself, though, where Factophile, who was coming out of novice company, I know some people, myself included, were maybe a little bit quick to look at that Brown advisory form and maybe not rate it to be the highest, but he was very impressive here in the John Durkin.
It's just a hell of a race. When you look at the 4 runners coming to the last year, Spillane Tower on your right, who's going to be favourite for the King George. You have Factophile, top novice around last season, Galopin, reigning champion, Fast or Slow, who's had his measure punched. It's just a hell of a race. Like, I think through all its early stages of the season, still we're doing well to have one better than it. But I think the readiness angle is what I'd hone in on here with Galopin Des Champs. We were actually down in Willie Munn's yard for a press morning with the field a few weeks ago, and I thought one line he gave on Galopin, I wrote down here, he had a thorn in a joint in the lead up to Punchdown. It was in an awkward place and we couldn't get it out, so he had a little hold up. He had a few weeks off after we got it out, and missing that time was crucial. I thought I wanted to get a run into him before Christmas and took a chance. Like, if you're looking at that run, and he's still not that far off them. And you think even last year from the John Durkin, he's a length and a quarter off Appreciated in a John Durkin last year, and then does what he does at Christmas with the greatest respect to Appreciated. I think this is a better run nearly in the John Durkin this time around, especially when you factor in the effort to get him there of what is definitely an imperfect prep. I know we're all very much kind of leaning towards Galopin. I'm not trying to pour cold water over Factophile as a top class operator, because he very, very much has every attribute that he could be that. And even age profile, it's funny when you look at the two of them, you think that Galopin is so much more achieved. He's only a year older than Factophile. You know, it's been a very, very different trajectory their 2 careers have taken. But I think at the prices we're looking at here, where they're tight and there's a little bit of value in Galopin still, that's where I'd be leaning, and just let the young pretender take down the champion if he can. For all that, I'd be more confident when we get up to maybe 3 mile 2 come March. I still think Galopin will hold the aces then. Pace-wise, Factophile, that's his big asset, I suppose, to take him on here.
The other big 3 mile grade 1 to get stuck into is the King George on Stephen's Day. Good to see 11 have held their ground this morning. Looks a really good race. Hewitt, last year's winner, the only real notable non-runner to talk of. But we've got Spillane's Tower in here. Dan, I'll come to you first. Grey Dawning, second in the Betfair, an excellent run, but will that have left its mark? I'm always very dubious when trainers come out. He's bouncing at home, He was absolutely drunk the last 100 yards. Surely that has at least affected him somewhat.
Yeah, I'd be like you. I think we discussed it actually quite shortly after the race. We were like, obviously, because you put him up as your anti-post bet for this race. So you're in a great position price-wise there. But you have to say after this, I think we were both thinking probably just going to have a bit of a break, maybe go to the Cotswolds, then on to the Gold Cup. I don't think any of us really envisaged him turning up in the King George after this grueling battle with Raw Pagaille. Obviously had his ideal conditions. obviously it's great to hear that he's come out the race well at home, but I think we really have to see it on the track beforehand. Obviously, I don't really take too much substance in those reports. I'd rather look at that race for what it is, and the general, obviously it was a slog like the Betfair Chase often is. I really do find it hard to believe any horse can be 100% coming out of that in the next few weeks. So I would be cautious on him. Obviously, the other angle with Grey Dawning is obviously going right-handed. Probably isn't ideal for him. Hasn't gone right-handed over fences since his Chase debut at Exeter. Now, obviously, I'm not going to just judge him on that because he's clearly improved leaps and bounds since then. But he does tend to adjust slightly to his left. Maybe at Haydock, actually, he's probably best jumping performance. There is a slight inclination, though, to always go out to his left, which won't necessarily suit him here. Look, ultimately, he's one of the horses in the lineup you hope can keep progressing and become a real live contender at the Grade 1 level for a couple of seasons to come. But there are those reservations, particularly about that run last time out, that'd be enough to put me off him.
I'm going to allow you to have your little trumpet moment, Donn, because I know you backed Hewick for this race last year. Where is your, if you were to put a tenner in the pocket this time round, who would it be on?
Well, I'd be Whisperland's Tower. I think we talked on the John Durkin. That was the race that set the season alive, and it has to be the standout piece of form going into any discussion about the 3 mile division. Obviously, I know there's been discussions about, is the ground going to be lively enough? Is the track going to be galloping enough? But I take a lot of encouragement in the fact he was able to achieve what he was over 2 and 2.5 miles towards the mid part of last season. Obviously, against the likes of Blood Destiny over 2 miles. So I know he got beat by Blood Destiny there, but Blood Destiny out and out 2 miler, and to even give him a race, I'd say is a testament to his ability. He turned the tables over 2.5 miles. Then when he beat Monty Star, obviously that was on yielding ground as well. I think he showed plenty of pace. I mean, you'd have to have a slight reservation that maybe Kempton, if it does dry out a lot, that it would be sharp enough for him. But you have to stay thoroughly in a King George. See, I know there's a lot of talk about pace. You need to be obviously quick enough to hold your position, but you have to stay. Obviously, Hewick showed that last year. We saw Q-Card show it against Vitor a few years ago as well, much to the pain of many individuals, I'm sure yourself included, Andrew. But you have to stay properly. Spallan's Tower will do that. I think the race does set up well for him, and he is the one in here. A bit like Grey Dawning, they're very similar profiles in that you think they could be top echelon chasers going forward. I had the perfect prep run, I think, in the John Durkin for this as well. He'd be the one I'd be siding with. I don't necessarily have as much concern about the ground and the tightness of the track that some others will do. Yeah,
Gavin, a horse now that we're talking about trip that has that question mark over his head is Banbridge. Paul Townend booked to ride, which is an excellent boost, I suppose, for the horse. Was running a huge race in the Hilly Way a couple of weeks ago when coming down at the last. Would you give him a strong chance in this, or would that stamina query put you off?
It's just a guess, isn't it? Like he has to have a strong chance. The question is, nobody can answer the question if he's going to stay 3 miles. If he's going to do it in a Grade 1 at a high level, it probably is around Kempton. He did win a Martin Pipe. He won over in Roscommon over 2 mile 5. He won well in Aintree over 2.5. So he probably will stay. I can't see myself having a bet in this race, but Banbridge would be on the short list, no doubt. Like a brilliant performance the last day till he came down at the last. He was given £10 to Energumene. So he has the class. He jumps really well. He has won over Kempton at Kempton over 2.5 miles. So just a 3 mile trip. Is he going to stay? Who knows? He's 5-1. I fancied him back in the day on a podcast maybe a month ago when he was 12-1. 5-1's getting a little bit skimpy maybe at this stage. Spallan's Tower, like the run of the John Durkin is definitely good enough. If any of the others that in the first 4 were in this race from the John Durkin, they'd be a lot shorter than him. Jimmy Mangan has spoken about the ground, so that is the only main worry really. One thing that's interesting is that Banbridge, when he won over 2 miles in Punchestown last April on the 30th of April, Spallan's Tower won on the exact same day, 35 minutes later. So, you know, I think the ground that day was kind of good to yielding. So I think Spallan's Tower might get away with it. As I said, I can't see myself having a bet in the race, but Spallan's Tower should take a lot of whack, and he's only a 6-year-old. He's on the improve. LA Francais has burst twice. Grey Dawning is a brilliant jumper, just like LA Francais is. But again, the hard race, and is the ground soft enough for him? Long Press has a chance. He does jump a dot to his left. He's 10 or 11-1. The stable are absolutely on fire the last 4 Saturdays. So that's targeting the race. Look, it's a really, really exciting race to watch, especially just after Lossiemouth takes on Constitution Hill. What an afternoon in Kempton. But for me, maybe Spallan's Tower.
Mark, talking about horses that are contracting in price, we've got to talk about the French horse, Le Francais. Obviously brilliant in the Coteau Star last year. Who on earth's backing this horse at 4-1 or 9-2, though, like based off what he did the last day? I could understand, I could maybe make some peace when you were getting 12-1, 16-1, you could take a snip at it. But it's awfully short now.
It's brave stuff now. It's braver than I'm willing to be. Look, for all that, like in terms of ability, this horse I think is, for strictly in talent, he's the best in the race, I think. But how do you, at that price, when I was on a Zoom call just before I've come to you this morning, the Jockey Club organised for the King George, and Noel George was on it, and he says he's bled. He doesn't bleed at home, but last couple of times now he has bled. I don't want to hear that going into a grade one personally. For all that, last year was just exceptional, and the time of the race in relation to King George is out of this world. But if he wins, I'll take off my cap and say well done. But I as a punter, I think it's very, very difficult to get into bed with that. I think Spillane's Tower is the potential horse. Absolutely, that run the last day is massive in relation to what's needed here. I think only thing would be if just that streetwise nature where you have, I think, chasers in Ireland sometimes when they get into a real deep test of jumping and going a good lick at kind of championship level, I think British horses can often be a little bit better equipped for that test. That's the only thing. Now, the only thing is, Spillane's Tower's at 8 runs over fences. Not like he's a novice last season that had 3 spins around, 4 spins around, and has been going 3 miles all that. I think the pace, as Dan alluded there, he's shown over shorter trips will stand him in real good stead. So he's my idea of the winner. If I could throw one at a big price each way, I think Envoy Allen, I see 16 to 1 there. I think that's overpriced for a horse of 9-time Grade 1 winner. Look, I'm not saying he's every day of the week the most reliable character when you need it, but strictly on form figures he is quite reliable. These conditions should play to his strengths. Freshman winning a Grade 1 last time, I just thought 16s was too big from a place perspective in a race that's very, very competitive. But Spillane's Tower, my idea of the winner.
Mark, you said there you'll have to tip your cap at Villefranche. You have to tip your beret, no?
Oh, sorry, yeah. We don't have them here in Offaly.
No, they haven't quite made it there, unfortunately, yet. But I couldn't be back in LA Francais. I think he's the worst priced horse of the entire race, if I'm being honest. We have Racing TV's very own Donn McClean to give us a couple of thoughts of his festival fancies. So we'll get into chatting to him. Well, I'm delighted to be joined here on the wire by Donn McClean from Racing TV. Donn, the Christmas period, great racing all around, Kempton, Leopardstown, Limerick. Must be a very exciting time to obviously get stuck into, and plenty of betting opportunities.
Yeah, that's part of the problem as well, Andrew, I suppose. Yeah, look, it's a hell of a week. It always is. Looks like we're not going to get any or many cancellations because of the weather, which is great. I suppose that's presenting its own problems in that the ground is not going to be as soft as we normally expect around this time of year. And that's been a theme that's running through the whole National Hunt season so far. We're kind of going when the rains come. We haven't had a huge amount of rain anywhere really. But we know that. We know what the ground is going to be like at Kempton and Leopardstown, and it's probably going to be better ground than we're used to at Limerick as well. We're used to very soft ground at Limerick over Christmas. That's not going to be the case this year. Dan Royal as well. And it's really, really fast. We're going to be an awful lot wiser at the end of the 4 days than we are at the moment, but it's going to be busy as well.
Just for yourself growing up, I suppose, going to the likes of Leopardstowns or Limericks over Christmas time, was there any kind of Christmas memory that really sticks to you when you were younger?
Yeah, sure, all of it, Andrew. No, when I was a kid, the preamble was all dominated by racing. My grandfather would get the Irish Field, and the Racing Post had the Sporting Life into the house, so there'd be 3 papers knocking around for the duration. And then going to Leopardstown, brilliant. I wrote a piece about it recently, actually. The memories of it all, and the crowds, and you're a small fella trying to wheedle your way through the crowds and trying to get up into the stand to watch racing, or even going down the bottom of the line to try and nick a half a point about a 6-1 shot. So brilliant. And then I suppose the racing, the Black and White Champion Chase, that was a big race for me. It was a 2.5 mile race. It's now the Savills Chase, so it's kind of morphed into the 3 mile chase, the Ericsson and the Lexus, and now the Savills. That was a great race for me with some brilliant winners of that. I remember Maid of Money winning that. She was a fantastic mare with John Fowler. She won the Irish National as well, and she still had the grit to be able to win over 2.5 miles, and then all the way to Best Mate and Beat for Salmon and all of that. But look, it's that time of year, isn't it? Like when racing kind of dominates the sporting spectrum.
We'll start off with the Savills this year, which looks, we've got 2 horses here in Facta File and Gallopin des Champs that are well above the usual standard. These could be well talked about in 20 years' time as some of the greats. We've obviously got the proven horse, the Gold Cup winner. We've got the up-and-comer. Who would you be siding with?
That's it. Look, it's a hell of a race, and the oft-forgotten Jerry Colomb, like he's in there as well. And I know he didn't run up to his level at Down Royal the last day, but if you forget that run, and I think you have to, for whatever reason, it just wasn't his running. Like he finished. He's a Gold Cup runner-up. He won the entry race, then afterwards went to the Bowl and won that. And he's a top class horse of Gordon Elliott's, and I always kind of had him down as a horse who wanted really soft ground, but he's not either. He won a Silly Isles chase over 2.5 miles, didn't he, on good to soft ground. So I think he's in there as well. But as you said, the two main players are Galloping Deschamps and Factory File. Factory File came out on top last time in the John Durkan chase. And it's brilliant that, that to me, and everyone said it afterwards, the John Durkan chase, it looked like it was going to be a real cracking race. And it was. It for me, it lived up to all of that. And you had the two novices from last year, so the two second season chasers, Factor File and Spillane Tar, taking on the older brigade. And we really didn't know until that race how they would have matched up. But they matched up and more. Obviously, they finished first and second with Galloping Deschamps and Faster Slow in third and fourth. That gave the solidity to the race that you kind of wanted. And then for the two second season chasers to beat the two of them, it's such a shame we're not going to have Faster Slow for the rest of the season. I think Galloping Deschamps might beat him this time, Andrew. Like in the John Durkan chase, 2.5 miles, it's just not Galloping Deschamps' ideal trip. Now, it's not Factor Files either. He stays well as well. But Galloping Deschamps, remember, he was beaten in the John Durkan chase last season. Then he came on to Leopardstown and put up one of the memorable performances of the season in winning this race by over 20 lengths. Like it was a massive performance, and you could see how much it meant to Paul Townend as well. He really seemed to get a big kick out of that. He just pulled right away from his rivals. Yeah, I think there's every chance he'll reverse place.
Moving to the King George, great to see the entries are very well stacked up. 11 declared this morning. Hewitt doesn't run. He goes to the 3 mile hurdle at Leopardstown later on this week. No Royal Pagaille, we knew that anyway, but it's a really strong race. Couple of fascinating Irish challengers. Spillane Tar, who was in the John Durkan, but I know there's another Irish challenger that you're quite keen on.
Yeah, I like Banbridge, Andrew. I've liked him for a little while now for this race. He look, as you said, brilliant. Spillane Tar is coming over. I know Jimmy Mangan is still a wee bit concerned about the ground. They're still going to have a walk of the track in the morning and see how he is, but hopefully he'll take his chance. And we've mentioned like his performance in the John Durkan chase was massive, and he was weak in the market before that as well. He had the pace to win the 2.5 mile Will of Worm Gold Cup at Ferryhouse last season. Then he stayed the 3 mile trip at Punchestown. So he's just such an exciting horse. He's only 6 as well, and brilliant to see Jimmy Mangan with the top class horse again. Of course, the Grand National winning trainer Jimmy Mangan. So brilliant that Spillane Tar is hopefully he'll continue to progress as the season goes on. But no, on the day, on King George Day, I think Banbridge has an awful lot in his favour. Like the ground is now in his favour. He's missed a couple of engagements because of soft ground, so it looks like that's going to be okay. It's going to be good to soft ground, no worse than that, and that's ideal for Banbridge. The trip is the concern for me and for everybody. He's not proven over it, and his one run over the trip, he was well beaten. That was in the Sefton hurdle at Aintree, but I don't think it was the distance that beat him that day. It just wasn't his running. We know that Martin Pipe hurdle winners over 2.5 miles, they tend to go out and trip. They tend to morph into high class staying chasers like Galloping Deschamps himself, like Don Poley, Sir Deschamps. They all won the Martin Pipe Kilolta Vic. It's a race that does spawn kind of staying chasers. And Banbridge, while he had the pace to win an Oracle trial as a novice, and he won the Punchestown Champion Chase, he just got up to win that, beat Captain Guinness last April. I think he's a horse that 2.5 miles seems to be fairly a really good trip for him. His only run at Kempton was in the Sylvania County Chase last season when he won. He beat Pictory, who's a top class horse. We know that at Kempton and Ascot, and then he went on and won the Ascot Chase next time Pictory did. That's rock solid form on his only run at Kempton. I'm with Banbridge. Yeah, I think he's a big player in the race.
We've gone through 2 of the main grade 1s there, Donn. Obviously, there's some fiendishly tricky handicaps throughout the week, and I'm looking for your inspiration because the Paddy Power must be the race that I am terrible in. I don't think I've almost had a horse finish in the top 7 in the Paddy Power ever, but I'm hoping you're going to tell me who's going to win it this year.
Yeah, I don't have a great record in it either, Andrew, I'm afraid. I did happen upon a winner in the last 10 years, though, at least that. Look, it's a hell of a race, and you've got the mix of horses progressing, and it's the same as any top top handicap or even the top staying handicap chase, but any top handicap you're looking, it's the horses coming on, and you're looking for how they're going to progress, and there are a few who fit that bill. But like the Paddy Power Chase, it is a race that tends to go to the kind of wizened warrior. Like I know Roaring Bull won it as a 6-year-old a few years ago, but he'd run in 10 chases before that. Like he was a very hardened staying chaser, even though he was only a young horse. So I've come down on Panda Boy in the end. It's a kind of a marginal call. He's 3 pounds higher than he was when he ran in the race last year. He finished second behind Meeting of the Waters last year off mark of 140. He's now 143, and I think that's fair. He goes really well at Leopardstown. He's run at the Leopardstown Christmas Festival 3 times. He won a staying handicap hurdle there a couple of years ago, the Pertemps qualifier. Then he finished third in the Paddy Power and then second in the Paddy Power. So he loves Leopardstown. He actually ran well at the Dublin Racing Festival in the handicap hurdle that Maxim won last February. So he goes really well at Leopardstown. He goes well at this time of year. He was pretty well beaten in the Munster National last time in his debut this season, but that was a race, if you remember, Danny Mullins, quintessential Danny Mullins, got out in front on Real Steel, dictated a sedate pace, and then kicked. And it was very difficult for the kind of mid-division hold-up horses to get into it. And actually, Panda Boy, he stayed on well enough at the end of it to finish. He was beaten about 10 or 11 lengths in the end. So it wasn't a bad comeback run. I think Martin Brazel always said he wanted better ground, and he's got a good record on good ground. So I think that the kind of better ground will suit him. He's only 8. It seems like he's been around for a long time, but when he won that handicap hurdle, he was only 5. So he's still a relatively young horse, still got more to give. And yeah, I just think that, of course, it's going to have to be better than he was last year to win it, because he's 3 pounds higher and he was only second last year. He didn't win it, but I think he can on the slightly better ground. I think that's going to be in his favour. And Martin Brazel, I'm sure he's had this race in mind for him again for a while.
Just before we let you go, Donn, if there's any horses that you feel are running over the Christmas period that we might have an eye on, that potentially might make up into a Cheltenham horse? I know there's plenty of kind of obvious ones, but are there any that are slightly less obvious, perhaps?
Yeah, look, I'm looking forward to seeing Hello Neighbour, Andrew, over hurdles for the first time, of Gavin Cromwell's. We were down with Gavin during the week, and of all the horses he spoke about, and he's got lots of horses to run over Christmas, Hello Neighbour just seemed to be the one that he was most excited about. Like he's run twice on the flat. He hasn't run over hurdles yet. He stayed on to win over 1.6 miles on his racecourse debut, and the 3 horses who chased him home, they've all won since, and they've got ratings now. 2 of them have ratings in the 90s. And then he went on to Roscommon, and over 10.5 furlongs, probably short of his best. He showed a lot of pace to win well there again. And he's a half brother to Wave of the Sea, who was himself a high-class juvenile hurdler, won the spring hurdle at Leopardstown, albeit a little bit fortuitously on that day. But he's well bred, and Gavin Cromwell, he's just said that he's schooled well over hurdles, and I think he's going to run in the Grade 2 race. He was in the maiden hurdle as well, the juveniles hurdle, but I think he's been declared for the Grade 2. So I suppose that's an indication of the regard in which he's held to start him off. And now, look, you could argue that in the juvenile maiden hurdle, it can be as hot a race as the Grade 2 race over Christmas. But he's starting him off in the Grade 2 over experienced horses, or against experienced horses. So I think that's really interesting. So look, he's interesting for the day, and also interesting maybe to have a look at for the Triumph Hurdle, because if he does run well, then his odds could contract. Better days ahead. I think he's a horse who's generally underrated, Andrew. He's a staying chaser in the making. He's a Martin Pipe Hurdle winner like Banbridge. He needed a lot. It was his stamina that won on the Martin Pipe Hurdle last March, when he stayed on really well up the hill. And then he went on to Punchestown. He wasn't beaten far by Dancing City in a Grade 1 race, so he proved that he had the class. And then his debut this season at Navan, his chasing debut, he was very, very good. He got out in front under Jack Kennedy. He jumped really well. And then it just always looked like he was holding Slade Steele, the Supreme Novices Hurdle winner. So that was 2.5 miles. I think it can be even better over 3 miles. I think he's an interesting horse as well for this week and for the season ahead.
Hello Neighbour, and better days ahead too, to very much keep onside down. Thanks very much for your input, and as always, have a very good Christmas.
You too, Andrew. Thanks a million.
Brilliant to hear from Donn. He fancied Panda Boy for the Paddy Power, and the Paddy Power is the next race we're going to be looking at. And I was saying to Donn, Mark, I need inspiration in the Paddy Power. I've probably been going up to Leopardstown for the last 12 or 13 years since I was in my teens with my dad. And I think the best position I've managed to back a horse in the Paddy Power was 7th. So it has not gone to plan, and therefore I am looking at you sensible people to put me down the right track of a winner, and I'm hoping you found one for me.
Well, I hope it's a case of great minds think alike with Donn, because at Panda Boy, to me, like, this is just, it's a never-ending saga. I've been fancying Panda Boy for various different big handicaps, but I think the way the ground is going to play this Christmas, where we're not into overly testing stuff, and his aptitude for Leopardstown, well capable of running the big race around here. I think he's still a horse that's reasonably handicapped off 143. It didn't happen for him in Aintree last year, but running this race last season by Meeting of the Waters, and again, Meeting of the Waters, very, very well handicapped on the day, horse on the up, subsequently snapped up by JP McManus. I was very encouraged from a rider point of view to see JJ Slevin first ride back after a real nasty injury. Didn't look like it at Thurles last Saturday, I have to say. He gave it an absolute storming ride. And you'll need every bit of strength here in a Paddy Power like this. I just think he's got a lot of attributes that you need for a race like this. It's kind of now or never territory if you're in the Panda Boy camp, maybe, but the day you say that, maybe it'll be the next day when you hop off the train.
Gavin, I suppose it's a fantastic race this every year, and I suppose considering certainly over in Britain we've seen some of these big handicaps only with kind of 8-10 runners for big staying handicaps, to have the full field of 28 in the Paddy Power doesn't make it easy. But it's great to see, and it'll be a fantastic spectacle.
Yeah, no, it's a great race every year. Are you sitting down, Andrew?
Yeah.
Are you holding on to the side of your desk?
I may
fall
need
off
to.
the chair. I'm going to go for a Barry Connell horse in this race.
Oh, bloody hell. I never thought I'd see the day.
I grant you today, I think he's got a great chance. He's 7-year-old. The handicap chase that he won in Punchestown at the Big April Festival is a brilliant race every year. It's the novice handicap over 2.5. Some very good horses have won that over the years. Kilcrush, Kemboy, a few others. Really good horses win that race every year. So he's gone up 10 pounds, but he's only actually 5 pounds worse off with Percival Galwa, who he beat quite easily that day by 4 lengths, I think. He had a run over hurdles recently. He's carrying 11 stone 3. I think he's reasonably unexposed. Sean Flanagan rides. I think he's got a big chance.
Well, I suppose it'll be a great day for Barry Connell, Gavin, because as you well know, Marine Nationale will have won around an hour previously. Your favourite horse,
Andrew. Now, like Andrew, it's 20 past 12 here. It's time to wake up. You can't.
I'm pushing my luck. I know, Dan, you absolutely salivate at these big field handicaps. We've got a couple. As always, Gordon's got loads in there.
I mean, Gordon's actually modestly represented by his standards. He only got 5 in here, and Willie's got 10. This is devilishly tricky. It won't be a race I'd have having a strong opinion on whatsoever. Reluctantly, I almost came round to Percival Lagalwa in the end, and that's kind of reflective of what kind of race this is. Like, I know he's basically been bashing his head against a brick wall trying to win a race like this, seemingly for the last couple of years, one since his beginners. But obviously, he ran really well in the Troy Town last time out. I think that's obviously traditionally been quite a decent trial for this race. He does seem to really like Leopardstown as well. Obviously, running a really big race at the DRF last year when falling at the last. I do think he's still fairly handicapped, and maybe all that big handicap experience he's accumulated may well find him in good stead in a race of this nature. He's a reasonable each-way price still, and he's that type of horse. You can definitely see him maybe bumping into 1 or 2, but giving his running off that kind of rating. Whatever wins this is probably very well handicapped, I'd say.
We'll move over to the Welsh National.
I do think one in here is just the wrong price, and that's Val Dancer. Like, he's a second season chaser. He's made really good strides as a stayer last season, winning 3 times, despite not always jumping the best. Then he returned at Carlisle in November, probably put in his best round of jumping we've seen, went from the front. And what I like about a test at Carlisle is, it's a stiff finish at the end, and he had multiple horses come to challenge him at various stages of that race, and he kept fighting them all off and found more and was going away at the line. I think that's clearly the sign of a horse who's going the right way and improving, and one that will really relish a kind of marathon trip. He's only gone up 5 pounds to a mark 126. So he's an unexposed, progressive 7-year-old. Ticks a lot of boxes in terms of the trends for those who like those kind of angles into this race. I think he'll go forward as he often does in his races, which often does pay dividends. And I just really can't fathom why he's 3 times the price of Iron Bridge, who he beat at Carlisle quite cozily. And to me, has far more upside than that horse as well.
Levy's Vladimir down at 10-1 at the current weight structure for Gavin Cromwell. Gavin won this race obviously back in 2018 with Raz de Marie. I thought this horse was an absolute out-and-out mudlark for a while, and some of the performances, I remember Clonmel, I was down there last year. I'd say the boots of war racing that there, still wet in the cupboard. It was that wet and that absolutely bottomless down there. And this horse just seemed to thrive through it. And I was thinking Welsh National, not too bad. But when you look at the actual going report, I think it's still just soft at the moment. And it doesn't look like getting all that much more testing. But there was the run last time for me, is Vladimir in the Porterstown at Fairyhouse. was actually going pretty okay, I thought, to 3 out. A horse that, doesn't do that flashily, but was still within shouting distance, just came down 3 out. I just think at the price of Evie's Vladimir does come here, and if we can get any extra rain, it's going to help her.
Gavin, Welsh National, anything?
I said Monbeg Genius when he was 12-1. He still has a good chance, obviously. Third in the Ultima 18 months ago behind Corrick Rambler. He was ran that day off 140. He's up 144 now. He did an okay run the last day behind Fontaine Calange, who's gone up £8 for that. But Monbeg Genius was also placed in a Coral Cup. His record at the track is 3 from 3. He won over hurdles and twice over fences at Chepstow. So he certainly likes the place anyway.
I'd like to remind you that our sponsors, Boyle Sports, are also offering best odds guaranteed on all selected meetings. Make sure to look at the terms and conditions below and get involved in a great offer. We'll move on to the final part of the show, which is the 60-second selections, where each of our panelists will have a chance to give ourselves 1 bet, 3 bets, whatever it might be, in the space of 60 seconds. I'm going to go first. I'm going to kick us off with a horse down in Limerick on the 27th of December in an 80-102 handicap hurdle. A horse called Collaborative for Oliver McClean, and he's off a mark of 101. Showed a bit of promise on the flat for Dermot Weld. It was eye-catching in a couple of juvenile runs last year when not put into the race, and I thought it was very eye-catching on handicap debut at Clonmel when not getting the splits and finishing a fast-finishing 4th. Oliver McClean quietly goes about his business every year at Limerick and seems to always come away with a winner or two. And I'm hoping this horse might do it for me. Last year, I got out of a bit of a hole at Christmas backing Bushman's Pass. I'm hoping Collaborative can do it for me 2 days earlier. We'll move over to you, Dan, because I know you will have something for me that surprisingly won't come at a main track.
No, unfortunately, the Fontwell selection didn't get declared. So we've gone to Weatherby instead, which has been a friend of ours in actually last week, obviously with Late Night Rumble doing the business. So the 1 o'clock at Weatherby is a novice handicap hurdle over 2.5 miles. And Marlaku, I think, is really interesting here for Tom Lacey, who won this race last year with another 4-year-old in Elagio. He came to the yard having won a Dam Royal bumper quite nicely that day. A form hasn't worked out exactly all that well, but it was a good performance on the day. He was third on his debut over hurdles when looking a bit raw to a horse called Captain Marvellous, who was rated 120. He made all the running. Marlaku stayed on quite nicely with a nice-looking debut. Then he ran at Weatherby over 2 miles again behind a horse called Road Less Travelled. Obviously, they went on to win that Grade 2 at Haydock. He's now rated 138, and he's running in the Form B at Aintree. He wasn't of his class. He never really threatened him, but rallied quite well, having looked a bit outpaced at a stage, and he got up for second, beating a horse into third who was a previous winner. The 4 was actually placed on his handicap debut for mark 104. Marlaku has an opening debut handicap mark of 108. I think that looks really lenient when you look at the form of what he's actually achieved. He steps up to 2.5 miles, which on the base of his last run looks like it will definitely suit him. Since 2022, Tom Lacey's had 7 runners in handicap hurdles at Weatherby. 5 of them have won. He's had a second in there as well. So I think Marlaku has to be of strong interest in the 1 o'clock at Weatherby.
Mark, we'll come to you.
I'll keep it more simple. I go to Limerick on the 26th in the 133, the Grade 2 novice hurdle. I think Mozzie's sister might be able to turn it around with Flora in the park. Tactically switched things up last time. Going up and trip, I think, is going to very much suit her in terms of jumping. She's very, very high-class bumper mare last season who was well able to cope with decent ground and testing ground. And I think the best of her is seen in stamina testing bumper. You saw when she went down Royal earlier in the year, that was when she was at her best. Getting up and trip, I think it'll only eke out more improvement. And, it's not an overly deep race. I think it'll be tougher for Flora in the park to go and make it like he almost did successfully against the Yellow Clay last time. So Mozzie's sister, for me, you just scared me at the last moment there because I was going to take you on, but we'll keep it separate, keep it clean for Christmas. We won't be falling out down Limerick like others.
Gavin, I know at the start of the show you said you might have a couple for down in Limerick. What do you have, and can you make it within 60 seconds?
I'm going to go for Hello Neighbour in the juvenile hurdle in Leopardstown, rated 97, I think, on the flat. In Limerick on the 26th, the big Westerner to take on Mozzie's sister. A good maiden hurdle winner over 2-6 in Punchestown. Gets the weight like Mozzie's sister does. The following race, Lady of the Loch for Charles Burns. First time in a handicap, was an eye catch for me the last day. Runs off 105. And in the following race, the 240, it's a restricted beginner's chase. Release the Beast, who was third to Ballyburn the last day, has a massive chance. Also on the 27th in Limerick, probably the bet for Christmas might be You Have Me in Stitches in the 12.19. Big eye catch from Clonmel. And I think Galloping Champ has to be backed at 7-4. And you mentioned that race, which the 3:11 on the 27th, Collaborative, Mount Ferns and Bridie's Bow. I was hoping that one of the 3 would show up. They're all showing up. So that race is going to be crash hot, but that's plenty for you for Christmas.
3 eye catchers for the 80 to 102. This is one of the all-time great races. It's getting better and better, this show. Hopefully you really enjoyed the video watching down below. Make sure to like and subscribe to the Racing TV channel if you haven't already, and of course make sure you avail of all those offers from our sponsors, Boyle Sports, down in the description. Thanks to all the gents. Hopefully you have a very profitable Christmas, and we'll see you all again in the new year.
Boyle Sports. Don't just bet, choose wisely.